Well, welcome everybody to Relationship Matters. We're live at 3 p.m. on Pacific time on Friday. Every Friday where we'll have a podcast posted, mostly live. Sometimes there might be a recording like next week. We'll talk about that later. Want to welcome you all here. We hope you can jump on. Want to remind everybody, and I'll do it a few times through the episode, that you can ask questions right on the feed that you're watching this on, whether you're Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. You can actually ask questions or make comments. We want you to join this empowering conversation we're having. Chris, welcome. How you doing?
Good, Mark. How are things with you?
Yeah, good. I had a good week. It was pretty busy, but a good one for sure. And today, folks, we're having an empowering conversation with Mike Chisholm. He's a good friend, but he's also a great guy. He is the host of Cast, which is the podcast for He Changed It movement. Now, this is a men's movement that talks about men's mental health. They've created a platform that's amazing, that allows a safe place for you to explore maybe some stuff you're going through. And he hosts that. And I was a guest on his podcast. It hasn't come out yet. I don't know when it's coming out, Mike. But and then Mike's also professionally a financial planner. He also hosts a podcast called The Letterman Project. He is fascinated with David Letterman, whatever reason. He was enamored with him. All of a sudden, he started doing a podcast, and he got guests on who of the cast behind the scenes of the David Letterman show, and it has taken off. It is an incredible podcast. And so, Mike, welcome to my podcast and Chris's podcast called Relationship Matters, Empowering Conversations.
Wow, live and free at 3. I love it. I'm very grateful to be here.
That's awesome,
Mark and Chris. I appreciate everything that you're doing. Your lights in the world, trying to make this place a better place, and I can't thank you enough for that. And thank you for that very, very nice introduction. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're.
Hang on, Mark. Mike.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
You just went on this podcast because Mark's beard is like David Letterman's, right?
Well, you know what? I'll tell you this. The first time I saw Mark, it was through an event that his son was doing. And anytime I see a beard that is even close to Dave's these days, it is the first thing that enters my mind. There's no question. It's autonomic, whatever you want to call it. So there's no question that it certainly helped. But his kid, I love his kid, man. I love Justin so much. And he told me that I would love his dad, and he was correct. And I love doing a podcast, do. I love a little bit. You do mine and I'll do yours. It's such a neat community and culture in the podcasting world, how people do that, and the audiences are the ones who benefit, because the amazing conversation and insights that come out of those conversations, everybody benefits from it. So yeah, no, it's fantastic on all sides.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Chris. I mine's not quite as good as David Letterman's right now. His is really long, but I'm getting it trimmed next week. So there we go. So I just thought this would be really cool. Now, Chris and Mike just met as we came on air. And so this is really good. I want us to be curious today. I want us to ask questions and have a discussion around different subjects that we're going to bring up. But I want to encourage you, if you're watching, again, ask questions, make comments in that comment, in the comments of whatever format you're watching this on, whatever platform, and it'll be great. So last week, Chris, we talked to this lady, or we played a video of an interview I did with a lady about money and marriage. And I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of people kind of hit me up this week and saying they caught it and they watched it and it really impacted them. And even your transparency about you and Lori and that story apparently hit some people right between the eyes. And so did you get any feedback?
Yeah, I got a little bit of feedback also, but hats off to Karen, hey, where she is in Africa, trying to help the world in her way and stuff like that. And a bit about how she does things and the practicality that she brought in that video. I really appreciated what she had to say, and she allowed you and I to banter about all kinds of different things with the way we dissected that video. So, good feedback. Money and marriage is a tough spot. It's a tough thing, and it doesn't need to be tough. It will always have a little bit of a sharp edge, but you can kind of round off those edges, and if you follow some of the principles that Karen talked about and the things we bantered about and everything like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was what really came out, was that a lot of people don't even think about talking about that subject. So we have another part of that interview, which we may show later on another episode. But also I wanted to point out to people when Karen reached out to me afterwards and said that she put in the comments of each platform that that we were live on, she put a free resource. She has a free ebook that outlines how to do all of what she was talking about. So I just wanted to tell the audience, make sure you go back to that episode and just look at the comments, and you'll see a link there, free ebook. She also has free budget worksheets and stuff that you can do. And so, yeah, make sure you take advantage of that for sure. Mike, you must, you being a financial planner, you must come up with this all the time, right? Like it must, I understand you watched some of it last week. What have you found that to be true? Like there's a lot of tension in marriages from the financial point of view?
Without a doubt. I mean, and first off, I have to say this, I'll disclaim this. These are my opinions, my own opinions. I'm in the financial service business as a broker, life insurance and investments and things like that. So not tied to any real one company. So the opinions I'm about to say are kind of my own, but been in the business for, 18 and a half years. Yeah. I've seen a lot of things come and go, but there's a lot of commonalities here. I read an article, and I'm trying to remember where it came from, but you talk about the breakdown of marriage, and just for simple math, let's say 50% of marriages end in divorce. Go into the divorces, and there was an article that I read that showed that up to 90% of the divorces that occur have some sort of financial root or component to them.
Wow.
Oh, I was abused. Well, why were you abused? Well, he came home drunk. Why did he come home drunk? Well, because there was more month than there was money, and he went to the bar to forget for a while. He came home, and it all came crashing back, and then suddenly there was domestic violence, or maybe a lack of transparency, or things like that. Many of them go back to a financial root. I've certainly seen that, unfortunately. I've had couples who start out as my clients, and then I have to help them on the financial side as they unpack things financially when they break up and things. Absolutely. Money is a huge lightning rod for all sorts of emotional, activity, both positive and negative, by the way, when it comes to relationships. So absolutely.
Yeah. I've noticed that too in my practice. I always tell couples, I'm a lot cheaper than a divorce lawyer.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you want help, it's better to work through it. But you bring up a really good point, because I teach, I've taught an anger management class and often and speak on this subject. And because I talk about things that hurt relationships as well as relationships. And anger is a secondary emotion. It means that there's something beneath the surface. It's not really because they're angry at you in that moment, but the stress that financial stuff can bring. And I think that's what really came out last week, which I think you just brought out again, is really important. Is it's better to have the conversation about these things. It's better to sit down, and even if you need a coach or a mediator or a financial planner, somebody to help you navigate that conversation, so that you can remove a lot of leverages from the, what hurts relationships, what could potentially pull them apart.
So many times the fear of the inevitable is so much worse than actually dealing with the catalyst that leads to the inevitable. So I can't tell you how many times, I think our job is in all relationships. I think many times if we can let the pressure out of the balloon a little bit of fear, the balloon of fear that's there that we're so afraid is going to burst, or what's going to happen when it bursts. I've had quite a few examples where I'm sitting down with a couple and they want to get their finances in order or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, well, let's get everything out on the table. And one of the spouses will throw out a credit card that the other spouse didn't know about. and it may have a balance. Sometimes, like, I can tell you some horror stories, but let's just kind of stay in the average here for a second. A lack of transparency about what's going on. In that fog, Well, there's a whole bunch of other fog stuff that's in that fog too, and it's division. That fog creates division, just like it does physically. When it's a foggy day out, you can't see as far. In a relationship, when there are things that aren't clear, it's the same deal. It just affects in a different way. And so I couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah, Marcus, it's kind of funny because we talked last week about the lack of, or the fear of communicating, or the lack of communication, transparency when it comes to your finances as a couple and everything like that. A little while ago, Lori had to sort of sit me down because we have some of our own mechanisms on how we handle our money and how, like I just only use one credit card. That's all I do, so that's my mechanism. But Lori had to sit me down the other day or a couple of weeks ago and say, Chris, your burn rate's getting a bit high.
Yeah.
Because I'm just a credit card guy. I eat the guy, yay, like this and everything. So she's like, your burn rate's a bit high here. You need to cool down. And I don't buy frivolous things, but sometimes I just don't think, right?
Yeah.
So the reason why I bring that up is that fear that we had 12 years ago or 8 years ago or whenever it was before we decided to transform what happened in hers, she would not have said anything. Because guess what would have happened? Me with my personality, I'm a reactionary human being. No, don't tell me what to do. I'm very good with the money, that kind of thing. Yeah. But we had that ability to work through that and have this clear line of communication. So she can come to me and say, "Cool it down, Chris. You're burning cash too fast." And now because she's handling the money. Now this gives it's safe again. It's all good. It's all safe. So good points about fear and what's driving that. And, and if you don't overcome that or work it through, it'll always needle its way in like that. And then if she had not told me about the burn rate, what would have happened, Mike? What would have happened?
The balloon gets bigger, and when it does finally become reckoned with, it's going to be a worse reaction. And that's exactly right. And sometimes people need to sit down with somebody because, again, sometimes that credit card comes out. Oh man, there it is. And there's discomfort. Don't get me wrong. And it just like, okay, maybe you were a reactionary. Maybe you're not as bad of a reactionary. You got that under control now. It's a lion that you've tamed, but still it's uncomfortable, but for a few seconds. But then you realize the next interaction when you guys have dinner together or whatever, it's better. It's like a nice exhale. And the same thing with some of these couples that I sit with, once it's out there, well, that person has some extra RAM in their head that's no longer hiding something or worried about something or it's gone now. And now that that's gone, there's extra resources to focus on solution. And that's a great thing.
Yeah. Does that work for you? Like I always think of the shoemaker with holes in his shoe. Like as a financial planner, do you and Candy, Mike's married to a wonderful woman, Candy, who actually he changed it. And she's amazing. Was that something that you guys had to work through in the early stages of your marriage?
Oh, we still do. Again, just like, Chris brought up a great point. Like this happened the other day, your burn rate's too high, all that. They have a mechanism now, right? But that mechanism still isn't necessarily, perfect. It's great. Yeah. You've dealt with it. You've become aware of these things. And I think the thing is, once you become aware of something, you figure out a solve. And we have done that. Like we have little shorthand things that we do, certainly that has allowed us to be in a situation where our comfort level is both copacetic. It's copacetic. Yeah. It's understood on both sides for sure. I mean, of course I think we experience it just like any other couple does. And on leaner months, stress is just the same thing as it is for everybody else. It's how you deal with that stress, right? And the nice thing is we do have a couple little exercises and mechanisms that we do and communication is really it. Like at the end of the day, the silver bullet is communication. This is where we're at. Okay, a little bit of uncomfortableness. All right, and however long it takes you to my life motto is don't focus on the problem, focus on the solution. And if you can take that to your money, where how long does it take you to accept the problem as to what's happening? Okay, whatever is it a few minutes? Is it an evening? Is it sleeping on it? But how fast can you move to, okay, now that we've got the problem, let's not focus on that. Let's focus on the solution. What's the solution? And if that's the next part, even for people who are in really hard places, what's the solution? Can we devote all of our time and effort and resources and emotion? Can we aim that emotion? We got a lot of emotion right now. can we aim it at the solution? And if we can aim it at the solution, that's going to get us moving forward quicker.
That's really good. I like that. That because another thing, a byproduct of aiming for the solution and working on the solution together, a byproduct is you actually connect deeper. And I've seen it over and over. When you're on mission together, when two people, any two people, even friendships, you know, like Mike, you and I bonded over HeCast or over He Changed It. And that I just loved the program and loved everything about it. And that's really what made us connect so deeply. And so when we're on mission together, Chris and I, we've been best friends for over 30 years. But we met on the job. I owned a telecommunications company and I stole him from another company because I wanted him to work for me. And we talked about that in the first episode this season, how we got to know each other, but we got to know each other through mission, through doing something together and achieving something and finding solutions together for things. And our friendship has stood the test of time, even though we're not working together in the same company anymore. We are still on a, co-hosting a podcast where, his sons call us uncle and aunt, and my kids call him uncle and Auntie Lori. And so that came out of being on mission together. And I think that is really important to realize. I see Gene Bernier, our mutual friend, has joined us there. Thanks, Gene. That's a great comment. Wisdom is flowing. It is, and I appreciate that, Mike. It's this is a great conversation.
I adore Gene.
Mark, to talk about that with the mission a little bit like that too. Is as the time goes by and you communicate well and transparency is there and everything, you also, create safety. And I think that feeling safe, especially, for my wife, it's important that she feels safe all the time like that and so on. But I think in terms of men to feel safe, this week we had a complete relationship gut punch. I gut punched you hard this week, and you and I battled about something. Like, we had a completely different set of opinions. It happened to be around you, Mike, by the way, just so that you know, but it was all good.
Excellent. Okay? I enjoy being the catalyst for such things. This is great.
But here's the good news, Mike. As the catalyst of us gut punching each other in our relationship about the conversation is that we realized that we were safe to say the things that we were wanting to say, that we were safe to share our thought. I thought Mark was insane the way he thought, his reasoning and his opinion. And he thought, Dollinger, you're a dingbat, for thinking the way you do. But as we talked through it all, we realized that we were still wanting the same thing at the end. We just were coming at it from two different angles. And because we created safety over all those years doing mission and life together, that when these things come in this day and age, don't you find it, especially I feel so bad for the young people, as soon as it gets hard, as soon as it doesn't get easy or their way, it's just like, I'm out. And that is a bit of a human nature, right? At the end of the day, but to be able to create that in a relationship, whether it's about your money or about this like that, and have that safety, I think that's really cool.
And we're in a society right now where it's so easy to check out. There's so much distraction. And in fact, I mean, some might say that we're being bred to be distracted. And really at the end of the day, being present will win the day. Being present and aware and mindful and deliberate is what wins the day. And when times get hard and we decide to move over to distraction. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there's I've taken my CBT, my cognitive behavioral therapy stuff. I understand that distraction, there are healthy ways of distraction. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but if the go-to whenever things get hard is to run away from it, it's going to come back. It's going to come back bigger and worse in a probably a more severe way at some point in another form. It just will. And when we just deal with stuff, I love what you said about, when you get it out and you deal with stuff, then you have a deeper level of connection. Which would you prefer? That's what I would say. Like, I know I would prefer the deeper level of connection. And if it takes a couple of eggs to be broken to make that happen, let's break them eggs and let's have that omelet.
Yeah. Today, busy is the new badge of honor. I like it this way. When you know how all the years we see someone or we even each other or someone we met. Hey, how are you doing? What's the first thing that someone says back in the old days? Doing fine.
Yeah.
Hey, how are you doing? Doing fine. Now think about this. Watch what happens when you go to someone and say, how are things going? I'm really busy.
Yeah.
Life is busy. So I'm busy is the new I'm fine, right? Type of thing. So anyways, Mark.
No, that's good. But it's all fitting in our conversation here because I think that it's really important. We're bringing out principles in our conversation that are very empowering. And I think that the number one thing that's standing out to me in everything we've said is absolutely we cannot hide. The problem doesn't go away because we ignore it. It doesn't go away. It actually gets bigger. And I've often tell people when you don't deal with it, when you're not able to talk things through, what you're doing is you're giving your power away and you still end up with the problem. And it's not even rational when you tell somebody that. They say, no way, I don't, no, that's exactly what's happening because you refuse to talk about it. You refuse to solve the problem. And I think that is what I'm hearing from you, Mike and Chris. We're talking about today is let's be gentle. Let's be safe. Let's create a safe environment in our relationships, but let's have those conversations. Cause I'll tell you, Mike, the result of that battle that Chris and I had this week was that I came to I had an epiphany that I was still struggling with something that has been years dogging me. And Chris, he and my family see me at a different level than I see myself. And it frustrates them. And I realized, you know what? I can see them frustrating. And so the result of that conversation was I felt more trust for Chris. I felt more closeness and connection. And I'm able to actually now I'm working at dealing with that again, digging down one more layer of the onion. But if we can't have conflict, see, people think conflict's bad, but it's not. It's an invitation to go deeper.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that's good. And I think this is a great transition. Mike.
No, yeah, can I ask you a question though before we transition? Because now you got me really curious. I was curious before when Chris said it. Now you got me really curious. But it's not about me. It's about what you were dealing with. Did it have anything to do with labeling, Mark?
It was
absolutely.
Okay, it's interesting, and I don't believe in coincidences.
Go ahead, Chris. You talk about the label.
I don't believe in coincidences. I had a guy on HeCast this week. We're shooting season 2 right now, and he's a guy from Britain, really big podcaster, like a really huge podcaster. Give him a shout out. He hosts the Waffle Shop podcast, and we were talking, going back and forth, awesome. And he had this label about him, and he's done some work about labeling, and he had this label on him, and it was from when he was a kid. And he's British, anytime someone called him a big lad, and if someone called him a big lad, like even up to 3 years ago, and he's in his 40s now, if somebody called him a big lad up to 3 years ago, it brought stuff out. It just brought stuff out. And we talked about labeling and the label that we put on ourselves. And many times the label we put on ourselves is how we live our life and the identity that we give ourselves. And it's really important to kind of do some introspective work and figure out what labels we have for ourselves, and what label would we want for ourselves, and why not just get the Sharpie out and write the label that we want and put that on ourselves and go from there. And I think what you two went through is an extremely important part of the equation. Who are the people that are our foxhole buddies, the real people who are under the surface that know us? What's their label for us? What's their label for us? And what's their label for what we could be versus what our label is for us and what our label is, what it could be. And becoming aware of these things is really, really important. I don't know if I have added to or derailed the conversation here with that, but it just, to me, there's no coincidences. And when you said that, it just sounded, wow.
No, there's no coincidences, and our conversations are empowering. It doesn't matter where it goes. We have an overall thought of theme, but I'd much rather go where we feel like we're going together.
Yeah.
Because that's more valuable to the audience. And what about the audience? Like, share, comment, tell us how you handle these things. How have you overcome some of those tensions in your relationships? How do you handle it when a friend is acting like a dingbat, and as in Chris's language, and you've got to bring them back into line. What are you labeling yourself with? Because I agree with you, Mike. Like, if we're going to label ourselves, why don't we label ourselves in the positive and in the good thing? I think imposter syndrome kicks in, but
oh man,
imposter syndrome is a form of pride, because pride either puffs up or it covers up. And so if we're if I think less of myself, it's just as prideful as thinking too much of myself. And so, that you hit it right on the head with the labeling thing. Chris was calling me up to a higher level, and to see myself in a higher way, in pertaining to this podcast, pertaining to how we present, who we have as guests and whatnot. It wasn't so much to do with you, Mike, directly, but it sparked a conversation about how we invite guests, who are the guests and whatnot. But it was nothing to do with that. It ended up being all about me and about how Chris was frustrated with the way he saw me undervalue myself.
Well, Mark, Lori and I stole Mark's mission statement years and years and years ago. We just stole it. It's a manifesto that's over here. I just arbitrarily just took it and said it's mine. I do have to give him credit all the time because he gets $3 for every time I mention it. But it is to reveal the value that every, it's to reveal the value that every person possesses. And the reason why I bring that point up is that the funny thing is that, like we were just saying, people don't recognize how valuable they are in everything like that. And I'm a guy, this freaks people right out. I'm a guy that has no problem with the word bragging, but not bragging from an arrogance.
Yes.
Everybody can tell a braggart. Like, you don't even have to have any kind of education or nothing. You can just, the moment someone opens their mouth and they go blah, 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 you can just, But if I were to use bragging in a way to say that, I know I'm valuable, I'm comfortable that I'm valuable in this way, and my label, Mike, matches that value that I bring. At the end of the day, your posture and everything becomes more, more vibrant. And if you do believe that people are valuable, regardless of the status of where you are in life, which they are, then why can't we be focusing on the good that we are and the good that we bring, rather than, oh, woe is me, and I'm going to be, it's better if I'm humble, better be really humble and meek. Don't want to say that, I know exactly what I'm good at, but I also know exactly what I'm not good at. And I'm comfortable.
And we accept both.
Yeah.
Well, I think bragging and enthusiasm are two very, very separate things. And one thing that for people who like me, don't like me, whatever, it's just the reality. I embraced enthusiasm a decade and a half ago, and I realized, oh man, my enthusiasm for life, for things that I like, for whatever, is a superpower. My enthusiasm for the experiences that I've had and wanting to share, whatever. Now, some people would come across and they would say, oh yeah, you're just full of yourself, or you're bragging or whatever. Those people don't know me. And why would I fixate on somebody's opinion who has no idea how I think, who has no idea? Somebody wants to come and ask me, different story. Somebody wants to see what I'm all about and gives the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, well, what do you mean when you say this and do that and act this way, whatever? Completely different deal, because they're confronting. And as you said before, Mark, it leads, confrontation leads to resolution. It doesn't have to be a dirty word. It could be a great thing. But if somebody makes a judgment call, oh man, I got very little patience for that, because we only have so much time. Life is not here. The society we live in right now, it's so easy to think that, your 5-year plan, you're going to be here in 5 years, when the reality is life is precious and it could end in a moment. You live in different places on this planet, and that is the daily reality that life could leave us in a moment. And if we can live like that right now, boy, does that ever cause an enthusiasm that just is there, and it's intrinsic and it's natural. It's completely different than bragging. And I think a lot of people out there, another platitude, losers focus on winners, winners focus on winning. And that's a high level statement. Like, what do you want to be? Do you want to be someone that focuses on other people and their shortcomings, or do you want to be someone that focuses on winning and getting better at what you do?
Yeah. By the way,
Chris, you're going to like that one.
Yeah, I do like that one. By the way, when we're asking for the comments, we also should say, folks, comment on Mike's sports jacket because he's so well dressed compared to Mark and I. Like, come on. I wish I would have known, anyways.
So that's a good
Big rabbit trail there. Mark, how did we rabbit trail? What are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to take this because this actually is a great connecting point to where we want to go today. And that is, since 2020, since the COVID thing, we've seen a lot of things. I call COVID the great revealer. It revealed things that were already cracking under the surface. And one of the things that I've noticed is business was hugely impacted, and business relationships were hugely impacted. Now, you both are businessmen, and you both have business savvy at executive levels. And I'm just curious what you're observing, Mike, particularly, but Chris as well. What are you observing in the relational part of the world? Because I've been touting for years that we need a more relational approach to business, and all I hear is things like even out of Chris's mouth, whereas business is at the speed of what do you call it? What is that quote you do?
We're no longer at the speed of everything was in microwave. We're now at the speed of nuclear.
Yeah. Right. And so
it's now.
And then with the remote and the hybrid and now I just want to know, Mike, from your perspective, and then Chris, maybe you can chime in. Just like, what are you seeing? How have you maintained? Because you've got a long-lasting business, you've got the podcast world that you do. You're in this movement of he changed it. How do you maintain relationships in business today?
I will tell you this. It's the simplest thing in the world, and sometimes it's the hardest thing in the world. It's exactly the word you just use. The word, it's relationships. Like, I know it's I heard it from a guy named Ed Milet. Ed Milet, if you haven't listened to the Ed Milet show, he's unbelievable. Ed Milet's a guy that came up actually in the same brokerage that I'm in, and now he's this absolute megastar in the podcast world and in the personal development, personal coaching world.
Yeah.
But I think he got this from Tony Robbins, and he talks about the 6 basic human needs. And there's basically 6. There are 6 places that a person would kind of warm up to when it comes to personality traits. 6 choices, I should say. Usually most folks warm up to maybe 2 of them. And I'll go through them really quick. Certainty is one. So somebody who needs to know what their schedule is for the next year. Somebody who maybe works as a government job, or I got a firefighter buddy of mine whose certainty is everything. He knows when his vacation is. He knows everything about his next year all the time, and that's where he's comfortable. Then there's uncertainty. People who are the circus performers of life, the musicians of life. They don't know where their a rent check or mortgage check payment is coming from next month. They might even not know where they're sleeping next month, and that's how they like it. That's uncertainty. Those are people who they drive to that. There are contribution, people who like to give back, recognition. People who do things to throw it out there. That's not necessarily a bragging thing. That's a there's all sorts of people who can do that in a very, very positive way. There's personal development, people who live to just keep growing and studying and learning and developing themselves. And then the last one is connection, is relationship. And that's my number one. It always has been my number one. And I didn't realize that. Okay. So
what's yours, Chris? What's your number one?
Out of those 6?
Yeah.
The first one, the calendar.
Oh, you're certainty. You like certainty.
I knew that was going to be your answer. I knew it was certainly the second Mike said.
So
answer, how does Mike know me so well? Look at him starting out with that,
it's not me. It's Tony Robbins. But I have subscribed to this, and so because I'm a relationship guy, one of the things that I like to do when I'm talking to somebody, whether it's a client, whether it's a family member, a friend, or whatever, I like to kind of drill down as quick as I can and kind of discern what it is that they gravitate towards. What motivates them, what motivates them, what likes them, what they like, and who they are when it comes to that.
Right.
Because if you know what the other person, identifies with, for lack of a better term, you can then communicate way better. because you could think about them and you could think about where they're at and what might get through to them or what might, resonate with them, and go from there. Because I think, to answer your original question, to me, it's all about relationship, especially when the winds start to blow. When the wind starts to blow, how is the relationship with your clients? And how, for example, you talk about how business has changed and was affected by the pandemic. I have clients who the pandemic absolutely blew up their business in a good way. And I have clients who the pandemic obliterated their business in the worst way. Right. The commonality is how do you relate in relationship to them at that point?
Right.
Are you running for the hills? It's funny. In 2008, I got into the business in 2005. And in 2005, on the money side of things, the economy was just blowing up like crazy. Oh, up, 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 up. And it was really successful. And it's like, wow, this is what the financial service business is like. Well, this is crazy. And then in 2008, party's over. And I would hear stories about advisors who wouldn't take their clients' calls. They hid under the desk, they hid under the bed. They and I didn't really know any better. And also I'm a relationship guy. So all I kind of did was like, well, okay, we're in a tough situation here. And again, what do we want to focus on? The problem or the solution? Let's figure out the solution. Let's get through it. Let's figure it out. And just doing that, it's the right thing to do for people anyway when you're in a service related business, but it keeps relationships going. I got referrals through that program. I got through 2008. I actually had my business grew. And at that time I was part-time with it, but it grew exponentially because you just keep the relationship and you value the person no matter what the stuff going on around is.
Right. So if I can put this just to bring it into a very clear, succinct message there, the first piece of continuing to build healthy relationship with your with business people, with your customers, is to be intentional about knowing how what makes them tick.
Yeah.
Be intentional about knowing how to get the best out of them for them.
And
then
listen,
and then the second thing is after that is be intentional at communicating with them no matter what's going on.
Have you guys ever, I can tell you this, my wife and I went through a really stressful situation about 4.5 years ago. And we wrote a book about it. My wife and I wrote a book together, and in one of the chapters, I talked about staying in the fire. And have you ever been in a situation in your life where you knew somebody who maybe they just went through a really rough divorce, like maybe they got cheated on or something, or they just went through a bankruptcy or something really severe,
right? And
you saw that person maybe in the mall, maybe on the other side of the street. You saw them around, and you turned around and you avoid, I don't want to, or maybe someone in their life just died or something like that. And you're like, I don't want to go talk to that person because they're probably too sensitive and they know that I'll bring this up or something like that. And I don't want to deal with that. So you just kind of turn around and walk away in the other direction. Have you ever done that?
It's awkward. Yeah.
Right.
I usually run to them, but yes,
well, and of course you do. Because that's the move, because that is absolutely the move. You go to them and you acknowledge, if they're comfortable with it, whatever, you make sure it's safe space, all that stuff. But you go there and you actually acknowledge versus the desire to get out of the fire. But staying in the fire, I have found for me personally, that staying in the fire is what leads to deepening relationships at many times. Like staying in the fire with people, I've actually gotten business from it. And that is secondary. That's not ever what I would be looking for, but the relationship is everything. And staying in the fire, acknowledging, seeing people, you go back to Avatar, I see you, right? Seeing them, even when they're in the tough times, I find to be a silver bullet when it comes to this stuff. And it affects not just business, but personal and all of the things. You never know what it's going to affect. It's just, in my opinion, one of the right things to do.
So again, it's running to the problem and being there for them in whatever the problem is, but bring them to finding a solution. Chris, you've been quiet in this part, and this is interesting, Mike, because Chris and I, where we will banter a little bit is this very subject. He's not too comfortable with unicorns and all the touchy feely
the
stuff.
woo woo. He doesn't like the woo woo stuff.
He doesn't like the woo woo in business, especially because he's, and so because he likes the stability, knows what's going on. So I'm interested to hear your feedback, Chris, on what you're hearing Mike say.
Well, Mike is dead on and everything like that, but you take someone like myself. So I'm obviously the opposite of both of you. I'm an introvert. I'm naturally an introvert. It's comfortable for me to be alone. It's comfortable. You want to do that? Watch me in a trade show. It's the most hilarious thing you'll see. I'm the tallest guy with the lowest voice, suit on, people walking by, and I'm like, someone's coming to me. Someone's coming to me. Someone's coming to me. It's like, oh, I better go shuffle those papers in the back of the booth, like this and everything. So, but just because I'm an introvert doesn't mean I am not relational. It's just the way I do things and everything like that. And when you talk about business, and Mike is absolutely right. I mean, he's hit it dead on and everything like that. But when we talk about business relationships, okay, one thing we have to remember is that a relationship is a relationship, whether it's personal or business. But in business, why do I connect with you is because you have a couple of characteristics that are important to me. Number one is you've demonstrated your value. Like you're valuable to me, and you're valuable to me not only because I'm safe with you, but you're valuable because somehow you either help me generate revenue, you help me solve problems, and you become a catalyst to remove obstacles, whatever it is. So you become valuable. And when you become and the question in business relationships is, well, how do you become valuable? Because COVID took us out of the game. We started doing this all day long in COVID, and Mark always talks about this key phrase, the power of presence. Well, if the three of us were in a room right now together doing this podcast, I could almost guarantee you the podcast would elevate by 35%. Mm-hmm. Why? Because we're right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's, we're right there, the power of presence and everything. So relationships, we had that stripped. So then how did we continue to show value? Well, I'll just quickly say how I've done it for my whole life is that number one is what you see is what you get. So I'm authentic, because I'm comfortable with what I'm good at in business. And I'm comfortable with the simple fact that I know I wake up every day because I absolutely care. I work in the tech industry. My responsibility is to ensure that our resellers, the people that take our technology and put it out to the end user, that they're profitable and that they have a frictionless experience with us. That's my job. So every day I wake up with the intention, Mike, you wake up every day. How do I help people be financially free? I can almost guarantee you the few minutes that we've been on together, that's what you wake up every day. How do I, in your business world, how do I do that? And for me, it's about being authentic. What you see is what you get. And in that authenticity, very quickly, I hope you see that I care because I can also show you how valuable I am. And people want to be, how it is about how people gravitate to like this. And I'm not saying I am this, but people gravitate to the superstars or to the CEOs and everything because there's an instant connection of value and so on and so forth. My job every day is to demonstrate that. Mm-hmm. So authenticity, and in that authenticity, this is where it gets scary in business relationships. I have worked with people that freak out about this, and that is the transparency. Yeah. I've had so many private, personal conversations with my clients over the years about stuff in their life that quite honestly, as you know, Mark, is not my comfort zone. I don't want to necessarily hear about the challenges you're having in your life over here. I am focused on the B2B relationship that we have, revenue generating. How do we do that? But I've also learned that part of it is that I've learned to listen, and somehow that authenticity is a magnet. Yeah. Now, it's just, I'm not good at a lot of things, but a few things that I am good at, God's given me a really good ability to be good at that and use that as a magnet type of thing. So I'm not sure how that ends up with Mike or Mark or how you want it, but that's kind of how I see this.
Mike, any thoughts on that?
Well, authenticity is a silver bullet. Like and I'll tell you this. Okay, so I think you will relate to this, Mark. I think I told you about this actually the first time you came into my office. My office is like almost like I don't know what you want to call it, almost like a dorm room exploded. I'm a huge nerd and I'm enthusiastic about everything I have. I'm also a huge hockey fan. Now, don't get me wrong. When you come into my office, I don't think there's a doubt that there's a person here of it looks like a successful person is here, whatever. I've got like some signed hockey jerseys on the wall. I'm a huge Kings fan. I've got a game used Charlie Simmer's sick signed by the Triple Crown line. Like, I mean, I've got an arcade machine in my office. I've got Boba. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I got a couple Boba Fett statues, like very cool.
Yeah, you're a geek, aren't you?
Very much so. Yes, very much so. A large child, but
and that, by the way, that's in a financial
Okay.
office, which is usually very stiff and formal.
Right. And it's the nice desk and the nice chairs and all that stuff. But I'll tell you this. You talk about authenticity and I think you'll probably agree with me on this. When the bad times come, I don't want the clients that are gonna be really incompatible, because they can make life a bad relationship, whether it's on my side or their side, so I'll even, give the benefit of the doubt and say, maybe it's me. Sure. I love my office so much. And there are people who have criticized me because I'm at a place in business now, when I have a new potential client or it's a referral sit down across from me, if they're looking around and they're doing this, like wishing that they were in the TD Waterhouse office with the static art on the wall and the guy in the three-piece and the elevator music playing, what they think is a financial office should be, right? I'm probably not the guy for them, because I would rather use that as a litmus test to have people look around. And if I know that we're not compatible, well, I've got other associates in my agency I might be able to, refer them to, or it just isn't going to work, because I want them to be compatible with me from the start. It's all good at the beginning of the relationship, because at the beginning of the relationship, unless I was referred to them during a rocky time or a stormy time in their life as kind of a lifeboat, if it's a referral where I'm just showing them who I am and what I do, if they're not compatible with me, well, it's a round peg in a square hole. And when stuff gets hard, that's when it's not going to be good. And so I love the authenticity. I wear it as a badge of honor, because it also cuts to the chase if we're going to have a potential kinship or not.
That's very interesting. Because, go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Well, what's interesting is the first thing I saw as we got on a couple of minutes before then was the Superman comic that was sitting in the back right there like that. So right off the bat, I think it was Superman, right? So right off the bat, I'm labeling this guy. Like, I already have stereotyping. And then he tilts his head to the side, and guess what I see?
I don't know.
Do you see what you... No, is it a man bun? Is it a man bun?
Oh, yeah. No, I got
the 90s grunge hair. All of a sudden, I'm like, all right, look at all this goodies and everything like that. But the difference is I've allowed myself to be curious rather than judgmental.
Right.
Because I don't know Mike, but he's got Superman comics, so right off the bat, he's a nerd. Man bun, he's Metro. He's hip and cool. He's groovy. He's really groovy, right? That's my language, okay? But I'm curious. I've learned to become curious about that, to see, because there would have been two ways this call would have gone. I would have been cordial and enjoyed the podcast and thought Mike's a really nice guy, but not my cup of tea. Yeah. Or I would have sat back with an open mind and said, at the same time said, I'm curious about this guy, babe. I'm going to listen to him and everything like that. His authenticity and his willingness to show me who he is in the background, with the fact that I can prejudge him right now and I can make an assumption about him and just go yes or no.
Yep.
This is where we are at. And so the thing is it's not that you have to be a chameleon and adapt and change who you are. You are who you are. Remember the value that every person possesses? Mike's got a value, and part of his value is showing us the courage to show us who he is. And at the same time, to say, if I'm not your cup of tea, that's okay. Because I can find your cup of tea in business.
That's my second one, is recognition. So I'm a relationship guy, but I'm also a peacock, and I like to spread my stuff. So yeah, you nailed me. You nailed me right there, Chris. You absolutely nailed me.
I'm an orca. I'm a killer whale.
There it is.
You're an enigma. So you're an enigma. Let's just be honest here. So
Mark, Mark, I think we got 9 minutes, 10 minutes left and everything like that. Are we gonna, what are we talking about again? We're talking about stuff.
It goes
right?
too fast. Goes too fast. Well, I think what I've heard, like one thing that's come out just as an overarching thing here in this conversation is that we need today, in today's world, I think we will gain much more value when we give much more value. And what I mean by that is we're doing a disservice to somebody if there isn't a connection and we can't do business with them. I'm not everybody's cup of tea either. I know it's hard to believe, but I have clients that will do much better with other people, other coaches that maybe approach it a different way. But I know that where my secret sauce is needed, it is done well. And so I know I've helped lots of people, but I'm not insecure because they get help from others. What I mean by all of this is it's a disservice for us to not make the effort to find out whether it's a match or not. And what if we went to the next level and then introduce those people to somebody that could help them? Like maybe they do need to be in the office next door to yours, Mike, but do we have the courage to take them and say, I think my friend, my associate here is going to be a better match for what your needs are, and do that without insecurity. I think like a lot of us, particularly men, since we're all men here, but we know women are watching too, but we are sometimes so insecure that we think that, the drive that drives us is coming out of insecurity and fear instead of out of generosity and kindness. And I think that that's a big thing that I'm hearing here, that we need in business. We need to kind of bring it back into the business world. The business world lost its soul in the last multiple years. It just seems like there's a loss of its soul. But when you see it, when you come across it and you find people out there that are doing an amazing work, and they do it because they do value other people, they value their clients, they value their teammates, it changes the whole culture of the organization. I always say you got to have the values of the organization written on your heart, not on the wall.
Mark, I sorry to interrupt, but you and Chris just flipped a coin, and you both have your own side of it. Chris talked about showing value, and then you are talking about showing people they are valued. And it's cool how you reciprocated what he said, just in a completely different way.
We do that a lot. So
you're right about.
Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
We're right about the insecurity of men sometimes and everything like that. And of course, I was one of those kind of guys where being a warrior and the strongest guy in the room always meant that you were always the one. And then the vulnerability and the authenticity and the transparency is a very scary place to be in. But if you can swim in that pool, it is the best pool to swim in. I always remember I heard a comment from Robert Herjavec, who used to be on Dragon's Den and successful in the tech world, say, "Don't confuse my kindness for weakness."
Oh, I love that. Or naivete. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, and I actually add, "Don't confuse my kindness and my authenticity and my vulnerability for weakness."
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's a huge one for me. Like, go ahead, Mark. Yeah, you talk.
I was just going to say, in fact, I believe that it takes more strength and more courage to be vulnerable than it does to put a facade on.
I'll tell you this. That is a badge of honor for me, because kindness is something that I literally strive for almost every day. I love kindness. It's one of my favorite attributes, and I strive to be kind for people. But many times throughout my life, I have been mistaken for naive or weak because of that kindness. It happened to me this week. Oh God, do I say it? You know what? It happened to me with somebody in the David Letterman world. And that's all I'm going to say about that is it happened to me. And this person, they mistook my kindness and felt like they could bully me and really make a point on me and score a point on me. And I know how I react to that, but you don't understand. I still am an alpha. I just happen to be a kind alpha. And you doing that. And I know how I reacted. I know how I wanted to react, how I could have reacted. But at the end of the day, would it serve me to react that way? Well, in the moment it would, because Mark, you talked about that secondary emotion, like that secondary emotion of anger. Oh yeah, in that moment it would have felt good. It would have felt good to, you think you scored a point? Oh, let me score 3 more. Like, it would have been really easy to do that. Yeah. But would it serve me? No. Why? Because I want to be kind, and unkindness, and then unkindness and unkindness, and it just keeps ramping up. And at some point, you need to be the person that goes, nope, it's not done. Go back to the old adage, 2 wrongs don't make a right, however you want to justify it in your head. And I really, and it's funny because I have empathy for this person. This person, what they did, and don't get me wrong, hurt people. This person is hurt. But at the end of the day, I now have a degree of empathy for this person. And I wouldn't have had that had I allowed that secondary emotion to go off. But yes, kindness and weakness. Oh man, we could talk about that. They are certainly not the same things. And people who are intentionally kind, no matter what, those are gems. And I'm not saying I'm a gem. I'm striving to be one, though.
I married one of those gems.
Oh, isn't that great?
Good thing he did too, because
you know how they say opposites attract? Wow. Just sit with Lori and I.
We know who the nice
Lori and I for 10 minutes, right? Just sit with Lori and I for 10 minutes, right? You know, it'll be just like, whoa. Look at, that guy wants to burn everybody to the ground, and he's in the corner, and Lori's just like, how can I help you and take care of it? Yeah,
it's amazing though how insecurity can drive us in decision making and in interactions and relationship. It's such a destroyer of relationships, and I actually think it hurts. I always say, show me the most arrogant person in the room, I'll show you the most insecure. And in business settings, in the business world, it's so easily seen, and it's so refreshing to meet somebody who is authentic and whatever, and then to find out that they're the owner of the company, or they're super successful at whatever. I think our definition of success needs to change. I believe it's doing the best you can with what you have. My success has grown over the years. I get better at doing what I have with what I have, but it's the striving for excellence, which is doing the best you can with what you have, and being authentic, I think, is really what came out of this conversation. And care. Like, it's okay to care in business. Don't be so insecure that you've got some cultures in businesses, in organizations, are like, they're so polarizing because they're all trying to vie for position or vie for whatever it is they think they're going to have. And whenever you get there, when you climb the ladder and you get to the top, it's not what you thought it was anyway, because the view changes as you go. And so it's really finding your sweet spot, finding out what you're really good at. Chris and I were talking about this the other day, in fact, just how he knows that he is a second chair person. He's comfortable being a co-host, and he's really good at what he does. He makes everybody around him look better because he knows that's what his gift is. That's what he's known for. And we've over the years, we've joked about it. There was a time when we were had a consulting business together, and I got to go on all the jets and go to New York and all these places to consult, and he stayed back and did all the real work and made me look good. And we used to laugh about it, but it was because he's very, very comfortable being behind the scenes. And I'm a reluctant leader. I don't necessarily want to be out front, but I always seem to find myself there. And so
it's fun. Just to say that some people want to be the guy or the gal, and some people want to be the guy or the gal behind the guy or the gal, and that's okay. And by the way, for what you were saying before, I mean, to go back to a platitude, but it's so true. People don't care how much you know; they want to know how much you care, and that is bang on truth. It sounds poetic and nice and tied up in a little bow, because it is so simple. And by the way, simple is not necessarily easy.
That's right.
Everything we're talking about today, a lot of them are really simple concepts, but that does not mean that they're easy. But again, you jump into the pool and you get better at it. The hardest time to jump into the pool is the first, the second time, but your comfort zone gets bigger. And
Hey, remember authenticity, Mark. Remember, authenticity and vulnerability will come at a price, though, and in business particularly, it will come at a price. The thing I've chosen is I'm willing to pay that price at the end of the day, because I'd rather pay that up front in the currency we work with than to end up getting bit. And remember, business, let's not play tiddlywinks here. Business is a shark infested pool in this day and age. But do remember that dolphins can swim with sharks, and at the end of the day, a dolphin can kill a shark with one blow behind the gills. So don't, at the end of the day, if you're one of those individuals that's taking advantage of all the vulnerability and authenticity because you think that that's the way you're going to climb the ladder, watch out for the dolphins sometimes.
So what you're saying, Chris, is that Mike and I are dolphins and you're a shark?
Killer whale. I'm a killer whale. I just swim around, and if I want to eat a shark, I'll eat a shark. That's
killer dolphin. You're a killer dolphin. I like it.
There you go. Flipper.
So as we wrap up, I want to just give a shout out to Brad Hale. Apparently LinkedIn their comments don't come into the studio, but I've had it on the side here. And Brad Hale, Chris said, "Hey, Chris." So he was sending you a shout out. So I just wanted to make sure Brad got recognized for tuning in today.
I would be remiss if I didn't. I met Brad in 2002. Came into my office one day trying to hawk his wares as a technology sales guy. Caught my attention. What was interesting is I can still remember. I know exactly the office I was in at and everything. What was interesting was when that man walked into my office. Is when he sat down, he created an instant connection. You know how there's people that do that. Instantly, I was connected to him. Had no clue who he was. Instantly connected. And you know that guy is another guy that I've had. I would consider Brad to be a friend, more than a business friend, because we've been in business, doing business together. But what Brad Hale did for me is Brad helped my career behind the scenes. He doesn't know this, by the way, so maybe he'll start crying. I don't know. It's okay if he does. He helped me get to where I'm in this chair today doing what I'm doing. Inadvertently without him knowing or him being the forefront of it. Right. So Brad, if you're on this thing listening, thank you so much for listening to it. I hope you're getting hope you watched our first episode when Mark and I talked about friendships and some of the crazy things that are happening there. But there you go.
Well, we got to wrap up here, Mike. I'm going to close this off in a few minutes here, but we're at the hour. So anything last thing you want to say, Mike, about anything we've talked about, or just a little exclamation mark on our conversation? Thank you so much for being here. You've been fabulous today.
Oh, I appreciate that. No, just gratefulness for the commune that we've had here today, and it's just been such a lovely experience. Anytime you guys need someone to shoot the bull with and to talk, I'm happy to do it. I'm really grateful for what it is that you guys are doing. Relationships are in so many ways. I've said this before. When I do financial seminars and things like that, there's two things that I wish were taught in school from grades 8 to 12. Number one is money and how money works and how everything works and how you can get skills at that. Imagine 4 years of training of that in high school, practical stuff. The second is relationships. Imagine if we could go through school learning about the different personality types, how to deal with them, what relationships are, actively listening, all that. It's so important. So what you guys are doing here is so important. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of it.
Yeah, thanks.
And Mike, one of the things is I realize now that back in high school, learning parallelograms hasn't helped me with tax time right now.
Right? That's
doesn't really help me with tax time. So, okay. So all you teachers out there teaching parallelograms and algebra in grade 9, maybe you should teach someone how to balance a budget.
Well, I might also say if there's any superintendents out there listening to this, I can come and do relationship.
Go talk to Mike. Go talk to Mike. He'll help your students get on track.
I do relationship coaching, and
talk to Mike about the money. Talk to Mike about the money. Like he can teach the kids about the money. Mike, I like you. This was great. Thank you so much for being on this. This was an incredible banter. Some fantastic nuggets. And you know what, Mark? We definitely have to have Mike back on the show. Yeah. And go Oilers.
Well,
go Canucks.
I don't know about that last part, but everything else, I heartily endorse. Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And so everybody, thank you so much. And remember, you can go to, I'm just going to put up, if you want to get a hold of Mike or see what he's up to with this men's movement, go to hechangedit.com and just go and find out about this movement. You've got to look into it. It's needed, it's timely, it is for now, and it is great. And it's just going to grow and develop even more. There's some exciting things coming ahead with it. Go check out his from there, you can go check out the podcast called HeCast, and it'll have a link on that website, and you can go and watch some episodes. He's had some fantastic guests on his podcast, and of course, one's coming up. I'll be on there eventually here. I don't know when it's airing, but
within the next 6 weeks, you'll be out, Mark. We'll get it out there for sure. And absolutely.
And so
we had a great show.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. So make sure you go and check that He Changed It out, because you'll find all things to do with Mike, and you can get a hold of him through there as well. And if you need any financial help, he's the guy to talk to. I refer him to people in my own kids. I've referred him to, so that tells you what level of trust I have in him. So that's really good. Chris, thank you again. You're a great co-host. Next week, folks, we're actually not going to be here live. I'm traveling, but I've got a pre-recorded interview I did with Gary Chupik and Molly Chupik. Now, you talked about Ed Milet earlier. Gary Chupik has actually met with him and been on the same stage as him, and he's a close friend of mine, and I have a fantastic interview with them about relationships, their relationship. And so that'll be coming up next week, just simply because I'm traveling, but we'll always make sure you got something here every week. So that will be sent out. And then the week after, Chris and I will be back bantering and driving each other crazy, and it'll be a lot of fun. And
you told me that, Mark, because next Friday is my 38th wedding anniversary, and I wasn't going to show up anyway.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, good. You see, it was.
Mike, quick question: can we get your book on your website?
No, you know what? We can't. So He Changed It, by the way. I host the podcast. My wife is the one that's changing the world. So He Changed It is the only men's mental wellness app. So hechangeit.com. But I do host the podcast. You know, I'm assisting her and her team, amazing team. She Changed Me is the book. And if you look for, it's called She Changed Me, One Ordeal, Two Perspectives. Search for that. It's on Amazon, and you can get it there.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you for that.
It's a fabulous story, and it's actually a two-sided book. I've got a copy. It's two-sided because it's got the his perspective of the story on one side, and then you flip it over, and it's got his wife's perspective of the story on the other. It's just a very fascinating way to write a book. It's kind of cool. It's about
if Lori and I did that, there'd be like, there'd be like 96 versions of that. Like there'd be so many copies.
Your side would be black and her side would be white.
Well, exactly. It would just be like, oh, okay. Anyways, we got to close the show here. People,
I know. I'm trying.
Mark, come on.
And don't forget, you can always reach me if you need coaching, if you need a speaker, if you want to buy my book. Go to markgordon.ca. You can. And there's also, by the way, a blind spot assessment on there. It's free. Anybody can take it. It's great to understand it. What we talked about earlier, it's great to understand different people's personalities and what some blind spots could be. And so that's free on my website. You can go get that. Go buy a book. You can find out everything you need to know. Thanks, everybody, for being here. It was great having you. Thank you, Mike. Thanks, Chris. And we will see you next time.
Cheers.